Welcome back to Coffee with Krav. Coffee with Krav, it's where I have conversations with different people from different walks of life. And what we try to do is we try to entertain, educate, and really just have some fun as well. And from time to time, you hear stories that really capture your attention and are so interesting that it needs to be shared with the world. This is one of them. Wendy, I'm going to give a little teaser here. Wendy was pregnant with twins and found out that there was an issue with one of them. They were very premature, and she had a choice. She could abort the one with the issue and allow the other to go full term, or she would need to take both babies out prematurely, and one of the babies would definitely have some issues, and the healthy one could potentially have issues because the baby's coming out premature. We're going to go over that scenario with Wendy and look how that scenario affected Wendy's life. So let me give you Wendy's bio. Wendy does wellness modalities, guided meditation, hypnotherapy, mindfulness mentoring. Wendy is a professional mindset coach. Wendy studied in Canada, in India, and the United States. She focused on existing beliefs, emotions, patterns of thinking, and behaviors. Wendy helps you recognize questions and revise disruptive patterns of thought using a range of neuroscience-based and therapeutic techniques such as guided meditation, mindfulness techniques, and hypnotherapy. Wendy works with you to uncover beliefs, blocks, behaviors, habits, and patterns of thinking that prevent you from living the life you desire. She has tools to gain deep insight and understanding of the way you think and present in the world. Prior to her career as professional mindset coach, Wendy founded and operated the Ideal School for almost 30 years as principal and owner. The Ideal School was innovative, mindful private school for students aged 3 to 8, 3rd grade to 8th grade. Her school was cutting edge with a curriculum based on Harvard theory of multiple intelligence combined with growth, mindset, and mindfulness practice. Wendy loves to share her inspirational life story and was a keynote speaker on life success motivation, The Secret Cruise with Bob Proctor and Reverend Michael Beckwith. Additionally, her heartfelt story is featured in an A&E documentary, Between the Lines, narrated by Robert Downey Jr. Welcome to Coffee with Krav. It's so nice to have you here, Wendy.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. So Wendy, going to start off, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So I'm a Canadian girl. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, great to have you here in the United States. And growing up, was it a normal child? Was there any dysfunction? Did you grow up in wealth, in poverty? How did you grow up?
So I grew up with a single mom. Eventually my parents divorced when I was 8, and I grew up with a single mom and one sibling who's my dearest friend. And yes, we did grow up on welfare. So we did not grow up with abundance whatsoever. Grew up with an environment that was challenging, perhaps not safe in many ways for a young girl, but learning many resources, right? So you learn some grit. So definitely a challenging environment, and with great support and encouragement from friends and teachers, got out of that environment early.
And those challenges, did they help shape your life?
Absolutely. I mean, I have a single mom, and the struggle and her figuring out who she is, and a young mom, and seeing lack and seeing people with a victim mentality, in my welfare building, seeing people waiting for that man to come in and save them, winning the lottery, and apathy. And I was like, I don't want to be this. I don't I don't want to be a victim ever in my life.
Okay, well, excellent that that you were able to escape that. We're going to jump around a little bit here, but I'm going to take you to what probably was the most important time in your life, and I'm going to lay the scenario out, and please correct me if I'm wrong on any of the details. But you received great news that you were pregnant, that you had twins, that you're having twins. You were hospitalized, and the doctor comes in with a question, and the hardest decision up to that point, and probably the hardest decision that any person could ever have. As I mentioned before, one child has permanent issues. The other child in your belly, it seems okay, and you had a choice, and they gave you that choice to abort one and save the other, or you can save both, but you have to take them both out prematurely, and that could impact the second child. And it wasn't like you had a month to decide. You had a very short period of time. So as a parent, I can't even imagine making that kind of decision. So take us through that. If I made any mistakes on that, correct me, and please take us through that.
So correct. And in fact, the media in Canada at that time called my situation Sophie's Choice syndrome, because you had to make a decision in 3 minutes, the same amount of time.
So the media knew about this beforehand.
Afterwards. Yes.
Oh, afterwards. Okay. All right.
Afterwards, there was a newspaper story and a radio show. Basically, what would you do in that 3 minutes?
We're going to get into that in a second, but I want to take you back to that. So why did they give you such a short period?
Okay. So first of all, I got married at 21. I married Prince Charming, and I really thought that spell of welfare and being poverty, whatever, all that dysfunction was gone. And then I get pregnant with identical twin boys. And I know you're not a little girl, but a little girl's dream is twins and identical twin boys. So I thought like it was enchantment. I was so blown away with awe of my own new life. And the ultrasounds were wonderful until they weren't. And then I go for one ultrasound and they've got a very straight face. And they said, you need to go right to the hospital immediately. And I was 26, I was a teacher. And I had to go right there, right from the doctor's office to the hospital. And that hospital stay was 2.5 months.
Wow.
So it wasn't a hospital stay. To me, it was a sentence on a floor where people, probably were going to lose their babies. And now I felt like, I was back in that welfare building. I wasn't normal again, but I had these 2 boys on a monitor. I'd fallen in love with them. And one baby stopped growing at 20 weeks. All right. So one baby just stopped, and they're genetically the same. And the other identical twin just kept on growing. It was not twin-to-twin transfusion, which people listening may think. It just one stopped without knowing why. So I was in the hospital for 2.5 months waiting to see why and what would happen now if that baby dies and wraps around his brother and chokes him with the cord. Will he just suddenly grow? What? And it was a rare situation. And so the doctors would come in 3 times a day, and they'd say over me, we're waiting for twin A to die, and we're waiting to see how it affects twin B. And we had legal documents signed that if twin A dies before 32 weeks, no one was supposed to do any heroics. If twin A dies after 32 weeks gestation, perhaps we would. Now, the dilemma is what was good for one was detrimental for the other, right? You couldn't open me up and do something, because once you open that sac, it's now not a sterile, you can't. So what you're asking then is, who's more important, twin A or twin B? And so you're trusting it'll all work out. And so at 32 weeks to the day, twin A, I'm going to call him Corey because that's his name, his heart started to fail, and they yelled code blue. They escorted my husband by police, and I'd been in there for 2.5 months. And so everybody crowded in the room, the staff, And this wonderful, lovely man, Dr. Graham Chance, not making up his name, said, you have 3 minutes. You can have one normal baby and we stay still, and the other will die and you will have a stillborn, or we go get him, but he hasn't grown since 20 weeks. He could actually be in the Guinness World Record as the smallest baby ever born for 32 weeks gestation. He was 1 pound. You're 1 pound at 20 weeks. And so they gave me 3 minutes, and my husband grabbed Dr. Chance and said, what would you do? And Dr. Chance was crying, and he said, I can't, my son, you have to decide. And they stepped out and they timed it, 3 minutes, one normal baby and let the other die, or go after a baby you have no idea what you're pulling out, and you could kill his brother because his brother's lungs aren't fully formed, and go. And I chose, because of a song, I chose Love is Unconditional. And how would I ever look after or look at the other boy and say, love is unconditional, but I didn't try to save your brother. So I went for it. I went for it.
And so Corey was 1 pound and Kyle was 4 pounds. I understand that there was severe reaction by the staff, the doctors, the people in the hospital, and
the community, family. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
So what we feared would happen happened. The normal twins' lungs collapsed and he got pneumonia. And so my sure thing was on a respirator for 1 month, and they said he would die. And I chose that. He was the sure thing. And the little one was 1 pound, brain damaged. Everything was damaged. I mean, he just looked like butter. Go to the store and pick up 1 pound of butter and hold it. I mean, it didn't even look like a baby. And they said, you know, he'll never recognize you if he makes it. He's just going to be this body you take care of. And so basically I messed up. And everyone had an opinion of, because of that 3 minutes. So it wasn't just having a disabled baby. I had this window. The window is the haunting thing, that 3 minutes of having to play God. That's the biggie. That was the biggie.
And so this you mentioned it played out in the community, in local radio, news, community. What was the reaction by people?
Well, so the immediate, there were certain staff members. Remember, I've been in there for 2.5 months that disagreed. Everybody had a different opinion of what should have happened in that 3 minutes. And a nurse leaked the story to the paper. And then it became a radio show where you called in, what would you have done in that 3 minutes? And I'm listening to people so angry at me, some supporting me, and then family. Each family member felt, you know, you could have just had one normal baby and then carried on. It was insane. And I had taught aerobics during my pregnancy, and people thought, you know, if you didn't do that, you wouldn't. Everywhere I went, they either lectured me, prayed over me, cried over me. It was a hole. It was such a dark hole. Yeah.
I can't even imagine if that happened now with social media and everything.
I know.
Oh, that was many years ago. And
can you imagine? Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. And they had to separate you in the hospital, right? Because
they put me. So some patients refused to share a room with me. Remember, it was mothers. It was young moms. So some refused to share a room, and then some staff refused. I can't even remember. Would refuse to treat me, and so they put me in a separate room. And then it gets really complicated, right? Because then you feel like that girl on welfare again. It just, everything got so very confusing. And so I felt very alone. And then there's a component. Then I looked at this young man I married going, look what I did to you. My body did this. Your body didn't do this if you had married someone else. So I'm telling you, it was like a tree with these branches that were just going everywhere.
Well, I'm going to bring you to a more positive branch.
Oh, good.
So Kenny Loggins holds a very significant place in your heart. Let's talk about how he helped your decision. So please talk about that.
Okay. So in the 2.5 months because the doctors kept coming in, because this was such a rare case, and they talk over me like I didn't matter. And
So they're talking over you. You're sitting there in the bed, and it's
you're in
like
the
you're not
bed,
even in the
and
room.
it was such a rare situation that it became a learning situation for people.
Mm.
So 3 times a day, these people, doctors would come in, and interns and experts, and they'd stand around my bed and they'd say, we're waiting for twin A to die to see how twin B affects. And they had a marker, and they literally wrote on my skin A and B and would point to my belly like a map.
Oh,
and I couldn't stand it. I felt like I was in a petri dish. And so I would put the radio on, and I'd put a headset in, and I heard a song by the singer Kenny Loggins called This Is It. He won a Grammy for it, and he wrote it with Michael McDonald. And it went, for once in your life, here's your miracle. Stand up and fight. You make the choice of how it goes. This is it. You're going to hear it now today, guaranteed. And I didn't know who Kenny Loggins was. I wasn't a fan, but that song yelled at me. And so my husband went and got me the cassette, and it became my mantra. I listened to it every day, all day, for 2.5 months. And I would go into the bathroom because it was the only place you could lock a door. And I'd lock the door, and I'd sit in the concrete shower, and I would rock and sing this over and over to my boys. Now, did I lose my mind? Perhaps. Now, in hindsight, I think it was going into my internal wisdom and strength to find light in such a dark situation. So when we were given the 3 minutes, when the doctor said, you have 3 minutes, no one will judge you, you decide. I sat up and recited a pop song. Literally just went, for once in your life, here's your miracle. And I saved my sons because of a pop song.
Fabulous. I'm gonna revert back to Kenny Loggins in a second, but I want to fast forward a little bit. Corey is home now, okay, and you believe that he couldn't understand things, and then all of a sudden a song came on, and there was a sparkle in him. Please talk about that.
So they showed us his CAT scan, the neurologist, and he said he'll never recognize you, and you know, you made a mistake. The neurologist had nothing to do with the hospital. And so he lectured us and said my body was trying to abort that baby, and we interfered. And so I just thought, okay, this is my cross to bear. I'll just feed him. I did this, and I was numb. I just looked after him. We did run away to Florida. My husband has a PhD in engineering, and we got in the country, and we had to leave because of the pity, and we just needed to start anew. And so we came to Florida, and Corey was all appointments. There was PT, there was OT, there was everything. And that's all I did. And I want everyone to know Kyle has turned out fine after that month of fighting. Yeah. And so that's all we did. We went to appointments every day, and he would just lay on the ground. And one day there was a Michael Jackson song on the radio, and he did this with his head. And I just thought, that's odd. And then I noticed again in a shopping mall, there was a Michael Jackson song. It was a different one, and he did this with his head. And I knew the brain was severely damaged. So I just thought it was a coincidence. And then I saw on MTV, look how we're dating us. I was folding laundry. It was like 1 a.m. and it was a Michael Jackson video, and it was black or white. And I don't know if you remember it, but yeah, the head turns, they turn Chinese, then they turn Indian, it was cultures, right? And I just went, oh, could it be? Like, could it be? And then the next day I did this experiment. Sure enough.
Wow.
He started kicking. And that was my first sign. Again, music. He was in there. And then at 3 years old, we did officially get the diagnosis. He's mentally above normal. And
amazing. Amazing.
So
a miracle.
Cool. Yeah.
A miracle.
Non-verbal, quadriplegic, but he is smarter than you and I.
Wow, I'm sure. That's not too hard for me.
Pain in the butt.
So again, speeding up a little bit, you started searching for schools in Florida, but it seemed like each time that you went to these schools, all of a sudden the classes were full.
Yep.
Right. And then you were passing an empty store and a shopping center, and you had an epiphany.
I
Let's
sound
talk
so
about that.
flaky. I sound so flaky.
No,
But
no,
you
no.
do, you really, you trust on those intuitive things when you're desperate, right? When the world maybe fails you in the way you thought it should
So,
come through.
he couldn't get into any schools.
Right.
All
So
right. So now you're passing by
I now had paperwork to say he was mentally normal. He talked with a little computer.
Mhm.
And he had an identical twin brother that could help look after him. And I was a teacher and it stopped, after the birth, and just everything was about Corey's care. And so I was so excited, and I started calling little academic preschools. And they had openings on the phone, and then I'd load the boys up and get to the preschool, and he had a little wheelchair and he had a little speaking computer. And they'd say, "Oh, you just missed the last opening." And I was like, "I just loaded them in the car."
Mm.
So legally, I don't think they could turn away, but who wants my hassle?
Right.
And so, and remember, the boys are 34, they're young men now. This is a while ago, but the answer was no. No one wanted my boy. And so my husband came home from work and I was crying, and he said, "We can't keep running, Wendy. We can't keep running." And he threw a credit card on the table and he said, "You're a teacher, do something about it." And I thought, what a goofball. And I'm only saying goofball because this is on TV. I had other words, but really, what could I do? And I put the kids in the car and drove around, and there was just this sign on a storefront, and it said for lease. And I called it, and I wanted this landlord to tell me to go home and tell me I was ridiculous, and he didn't. And I want to say his name. He was the county commissioner of Florida, and his name is Jess Santa Maria. And this little Philippine man leased me this bay, knowing I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I couldn't probably pay the rent. And for whatever reason, he said, "Let's do this," and believed in me. And then 28 years later, it turns out to be a school of 300 students, 2 buildings.
So let's take that step back. So you
Okay.
created a school called the Ideal
Ideal
School.
school. Mhm.
Okay. And talk about its purpose and why it became so popular.
Okay. So remember, again, I'm just a mom who's desperate. And so I maxed out every credit card. It was one bay, and I started a preschool. And I started school because I needed something for my son. Now, it was not for disabled children. Now, it wasn't not for them. They just didn't come. I wasn't an expert in that. I had a disabled son. So I didn't have a business plan. I just opened it up. What it was my escape. It really was. It wasn't even about the children. I wanted to create a utopia where nobody would get hurt. It was for me to hide out. If you want to be honest, I wanted a hideout. And so we maxed out every card, and I thought, if it's so pretty and if it was so enchanting, your people are going to come in the store, nobody's going to hurt them, and no one's going to turn them away, and everybody's going to be loved. I had like this whole fairy tale thing. And believe it or not, it worked. And I think what happened was people thought, if I could love Corey, I could love their child. And so honestly, the very first person to come in was Stephanie Seymour. And I'm not name dropping. It was just this very famous person came in.
And the look of the school was like Disney World, right?
It did. It had 3-dimensional trees, a winding yellow brick road. I literally took your favorite storybook and took it out of a book and put it in person. There was a big ship, and the only way to get in the school was to crawl through a porthole. I wanted people to be like, oh, I wanted something so not real, something so amazing. And
the kids' ages
it was for 3-year-olds were in the morning, and then pre-K you turned 4 and 5 in the afternoon, and then you left me to go to a kindergarten. So it was just little babies. And so so people kept looking in the window going, what is this? And honestly, I would just get ideas, and it was so beautiful. The walls sparkled. I had it sprayed with sparkles, and it looked like Vegas on steroids for children. It really, and then I kept going, and Chris kept saying, my husband kept saying, yes, because I got happy, and he got me back.
And Stephanie Seymour was the first person?
She just walked in and saw it, and she said, I've never seen anything like this. And she went and told her friends. So that was pivotal because I didn't market or anything. she went and told all her friends, and then in they came, and then they told people. So there wasn't a plan. I just opened the doors, and I just taught from my heart. And I knew to engage my son, you had to be real dramatic, and you'll probably watch me and see, I don't know how not to be. So there was music, I made up songs about everything, costumes, there was movement, there was nature, and the children were retaining things. So then what started happening was the children started testing gifted, which is a score of 130 on an IQ test. I didn't administer the test. They went to private psychologists in the community, and the results would come back. Then they would go to a gifted program in the community. Well, this kept happening. So I got a call from Tallahassee accusing me of rigging the tests. I know it was impossible for that many children to test 130 and above on this test from this little school. So instead of asking me, what are you doing right? The call was, we're sending out a team. It was almost like an audit team to see, you must be messing around, because there's no way this is possible. And I panicked, and I called my principal in Canada, and he flew down and said, do you know what you're doing has a theory? And I was like, no, it doesn't. It's me. I'm like Lucy. I don't have a theory. And it was called Multiple Intelligence by Dr. Howard Gardner at Cognition in Harvard. And basically what it means is you're using all of the human being's intelligences, visual, spatial, the naturalist, music. Good marketing does it naturally. That's why we buy the product. I didn't know that. What I knew was to reach my son, the more ways I could light up the brain, the more it would be internalized, go in the hippocampus, and then you'd be able to use it in real life. So now I had a theory. Then I actually was sent, Dr. Gardner was flown here, all these incredible things happened. Wow. And I went to Harvard and studied with him in the summer in a thing called Project Zero. So, but again, it came from my broken son. Do you see? The gifts came. Beauty. Yeah. So the school wasn't for disabled, but it was the message my son's soul brought. So that's how I saw it, that this message from Corey needed to be maximized so that every human being that had the opportunity to learn from the gift of this soul that came in this package is going to be better for all of us. So that was my mission. Do you see? That was the school.
And just expand on that, these kids that went to the school that had these high IQs, not that, any of these major schools, Harvard, Yale, all that, right, but they wound up going to some of the greatest schools in the country.
The greatest schools with the greatest positions. And this is what's so wonderful is I get these incredible adults now emailing me, thanking me for the message of Corey. Amazing. Because they're leaders in their community. They had the resources to be leaders, but now they have this EQ, that emotional quotient to match their IQ. And that's what's truly lacking. And then the parents, all were coming back going, you have to expand, because I didn't believe in I didn't believe external rewards, the honor roll. I didn't believe in those things. I believed intrinsic motivation. And so I expanded, and Jess Santa Maria had a warehouse. He leased it till we could buy it. And then we just kept growing and growing till 8th grade.
That's fabulous. And now I want to come back with Kenny Loggins. I mentioned that I would make a comeback with Kenny Loggins. So he came to your school.
He did.
And Amy did a special, and Robert Downey Jr. narrated it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Again, you've got to believe with these synchronicities, my friend, because you just got to trust. When Corey was 8, now you have to realize Corey is in a body that it is termed a quadriplegic. Every limb is affected by cerebral palsy. He's nonverbal. It's all muscles. And he's stuck, right? He's got these grand ideas. And now I want you to think for a second what this, imagine what this would be like. You are living with another human being, not a sibling, but that has the identical body to what you should have had. I can't even imagine. Now imagine you are in this broken down vehicle and you're looking at your image, getting muscles, getting handsomer, driving, running out the door for dates, and your world stays like this, and you're atrophying. I can't even imagine. The same face as you. So all this is going on. We're just so happy he's bright. We're just so happy that that's there, right? So now at 8, his legs start to cross over. I have to use my hands to show you. His muscles, he's going through a growth spurt, so his muscles get tighter. So he has to go to Shriners Hospital, and they shave the muscles just to get more function. So it's not walking. It's 2 legs now go side by side. The heels don't lift, they go down. He thinks he's in a red, bright body cast for 7 weeks. It goes from here down to his feet. They shave the muscles, so now he's spazzing. He's in pain for 7 weeks. We're at Shriners. In his little mind, Mark, he thinks when that cast is cut off, what do you think he thinks?
He's going to walk.
He's going to jump out of bed and be like his twin.
Mm.
He thought, can you imagine? He's thinking, he knows his story. He's thinking it just takes longer, but I'm just took longer to cook. I'm right there. And when the cast came off, we're all jumping up and down excited because now I can get a diaper on him. I can do things easier with his body. And he looked at us and he went, this is it? This is all that's going to happen? And we went, yeah, this is great. It was a success. And he kept, I can only sign what he did. He goes, you knew? It was worse than the birth. He thought we pulled a fast one on him because we chose this knowing this would be it. He could not believe that. So now my own son is on the camp of, you shouldn't have chose this for me. God. You had no, so he was very angry and he believed we had no right to choose this for him. He didn't want this. So he starved himself.
Oh God.
He starved. It was so he refused to eat. And he got severely malnourished by his choice. And he was going into a coma. And he begged me to let him die. So I made a deal with him. And I said, we're going to put a feeding tube in you. He had to have surgery by his choice. And we got to get you out of malnourishment because you're so depressed now. And if we do this, if you still want to die, I will take you somewhere where you're allowed to die. And I made him a promise. Wow. And that was a mom and son promise that if he would just give it a second, let's do the tube. And then we'll relook at it. And then I'll take you and you could do what you always wanted. And then I couldn't believe it that I actually made that promise. And we took turns at the intensive care unit because we had his brother at home. And I went home, and I'm so honest about this because everybody is doing their journey and maybe this helps someone else. But a girlfriend came over and I drank a bottle of wine and she put a piece of paper in front of me and she said, who are you mad at? She thought I would say God. And she just wanted me to get it out, right? She said, just write on paper who you're mad at. And I said, Kenny effing Loggins. And I blamed Kenny Loggins for everything because I saved Corey because of that song. So I wrote a drunk letter. You still want me on the show?
Yes, yeah, keep going. It's great.
I did. I wrote a letter to Kenny Loggins and blamed him for everything.
And Kenny read this?
He got that. My girlfriend FedExed the letter without me knowing. He got the letter. It was sent to the next place he was performing. I got up the next morning and went to the hospital, and I hadn't listened to the song since their birth because it reminded me of all that. Forgot all about the song, really. And now it stirred up something. And I was like, I got to hear my song. I got to hear my song. So he got the letter, and you'll have to watch the documentary and see, but he flew to my school.
Wow.
It resonated with him that he saved a life. And, you know, I flew out, I lost my mind, and I flew out to hear my song.
You went to his concert.
I flew, beyond all logic, I had to hear it. It was this, I was so compelled that I needed, before maybe taking Corey somewhere to die, I needed to hear my song, not on a record I needed to hear it. And I traveled to San Jose, and on my own. My sister met me there from Canada because my husband called her and said, what your sister's losing her mind. And I wanted to hear it. And meanwhile, Kenny got the letter backstage, didn't know I was there. You'll have to watch. And so there's all these synchronicities. And he flew back and sang to my son in the school I created. And there's murals of Kenny in the school. And then I've been going.
He kind of saved your son's life twice.
Yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah, I never thought about that. Because after that, I came in and it was like I busted down the door. It was like Corey had made me a victim again, like he'd pulled me under. And he needed me to be a mom. And you're right. I swear, Mark, I never thought about that. I marched into his room and he didn't know what hit him. I was like, we're going to change the world. You are not a mistake. Snap out of it. And he needed that. And since that day, I never looked back. And that's what the school's about, my motivational talks. I want people to get what you think is your worst mistake or the greatest adversity. Kenny calls it, what is it, the night of the soul, or the dark night of the soul is what he calls it. Whatever, we're all going to have it. But if you can trust in it, I swear it'll be your greatest gift.
Great
and that's
message.
what I learned from all this.
Great message. Thank you. Thank you for
and
that.
I go, I just finished my last concert, I think was maybe 4 weeks ago, because Kenny's retiring, and he called it the This Is It tour. I was front row center, and I've been going for 23 years. I've never missed a year. I call it Church of Kenny, and people can say whatever they want. It refuels me. I come back, I do what I need to do, and remember our purpose and Corey's purpose, and we go big.
That's amazing. Amazing story. I want to talk a little bit more about refueling or fueling.
Yeah.
You traveled to India.
Mm-hmm.
What was your purpose and what did you learn there?
So I learned, I was going through this phase, and I think many people do. People call it the midlife crisis. I think it's a midlife awakening. But our culture has this if-then model. If you do this, then you'll feel happy. And we keep changing our if, right? And I fell into that. And the school was successful. My marriage was successful. I was doing everything right. But I didn't feel it inside. And people kept applauding me. And the more talks I did, whatever, the more success, I still didn't feel it inside. And it gets to you. It's like a grit. And I turned 50 and I was like, I need to get rid of this finally. That 3-minute decision still was in there. I wanted forgiveness. And so our culture, I couldn't find it here. And so I started this quest, not purposeful. Again, I never have a plan. But I started a quest of maybe other cultures could bring me peace. So I started in Tulum with the Mayans, and then I went to, Sedona, and I studied meditation. I wanted answers. And then, I ended up in Rishikesh, India for 6 or 7 weeks studying in the Himalayan mountains. Then I went and did ayahuasca in the jungle. And I'm not saying for anyone to do these things, but I'm saying I wanted peace so badly, authentic, full out. I could look in the mirror and really feel peace. And that's what it provided. And what I learned is quit searching, everyone. It's in there already. I searched all over to realize everything I was searching for, I already have it.
So you don't have to go to Tulum, Mexico. You don't have to go to India. You don't have to go to Sedona. It's right here.
It's all here. And that's what I teach people. It's all here. But it's at a subconscious, that's why we call it sub. It's not at our conscious awareness. And we spend so much of our effort in that if-then model, achievement-oriented, goal-oriented, that we forget to sink down to those set beliefs, the emotions, the thoughts, which then lead to our conscious behaviors. So that's what I work on. I really want people to be an explorer within. Quit going, where do you want to travel next? How about go in there and reconnect?
So let me talk a little bit about that meditation. I've been told that, just like you take a shower, a bath every day to wash your outside, you need to wash your insides.
Correct.
So I have 2 questions, and you can take either one or both together. what's the significance of meditating and the science of meditation? What happens internally in our brain waves, and how does this help us?
Okay, so I'm all about the science. And so what happens is we have a limbic brain, the oldest part of our brain, and we have what's called the amygdala. And I always show children it's like right in here, and then you have your prefrontal cortex covering it. And that amygdala served us very well when we had to hunt and gather, right? We had to beware of the carnivore. But right now we're civilized. The amygdala doesn't know that. And this is what I want people to realize. So we have a very overworked amygdala. We are always looking for the next thing to screw us over, right? The traffic jam is now the carnivore. And now look at the pandemic. So we are chronically as a culture in fight, flight, or freeze. And freeze is a part of it. Being overwhelmed, where we can't even get out of bed, anxiety, fight, flight, or freeze. It's become our norm. So in our culture, what research says is 50 times a day, that amygdala is firing in our brains. 50 times a day. It's like your foot is on acceleration in your car. You can't keep running like that. You can't keep running in that nervous system, that fight, flight, or freeze. We were meant to hunt and go in the cave. Hunt, go in the cave. If you are chronically like this, our system breaks down. Again, research says 98% of all diseases. I even have a dear friend who believes, he's a cardiologist. He says, Wendy, leans in, it's 100%. Yeah. Your system disease is dis-ease. If you are constantly having to fight, flight, or freeze, right? If you're constantly in that sympathetic nervous system, it throws off your digestion. It throws off, your blood leaves your brain to go to your limbs. We can't think straight. It affects our hippocampus. We can't remember things. Our blood thickens. Do you know what thickens in case a carnivore bites you? Well, now we've got this heavy, thick blood and our heart's racing. We have heart attacks. Blood pressure goes up. I mean, everything. So you must go back in the cave. You must sit. That's all I'm asking you to do. Be still, stop the multitasking. And every time you read a post on social media, all those emotions go, you get triggered. That amygdala thinks it's life or death. And you get shot with two things, adrenaline and cortisol. Go look up the effects of adrenaline and cortisol. Then I ask you, you want to brush your teeth or meditate? You should be choosing meditate. I hope you do both, but goodness gracious, take care of you. Especially right now.
So, and thank you for that. I believe in that. So I'm glad that you brought that out. But let's talk about where you're putting your energy now. You created a secular meditation studio called Breathe Modern Meditation. Yeah. If I came into your studio, what would my experience be like?
All right. So first of all, I always joke. My people are happy hour people. Okay, so I'm not this young girl in a yoga outfit and all that. I really want to reach my type A people. We're achievement oriented. Okay, so when you come in, it is secular. There's no Buddhists and I believe all kinds of wonderful things, but I put them in a blender. What I'm after is balance. So you would come in, and actually today I have an athlete, a professional athlete I'll be seeing this afternoon. You are going to understand that. Quit searching for the aha, all right? It's in here. What I'm going to teach you is what to do when you're triggered out in your busy world. What to do when you start to feel the stress. You know when you feel it, you get short with the people you love, you can't remember things. Soon as you start to feel that amygdala triggered, to start being aware, the key is aware of that internal landscape that is you. When you're aware, I'm going to teach you to stop. First, take some breaths, so you're going to regulate that nervous system. So the amygdala settles down, and you can now come from the parasympathetic nervous system and respond to your life instead of react. Okay, so when you do that, then you're going to observe without judgment. It's called mindfulness. You're going to be in the moment, be very present without judgment. So you're going to observe and state what's going on right now. Then go in. How do I feel about this? Is it based on a true belief, false belief? Where's this coming from? Do you see it's strategic?
Mm-hmm.
Then and only then you will learn to proceed and respond to your life. Now, I always joke with people, when you have an emergency, do you call first reactors or do you call first responders? You call first responders.
Yeah, sure.
They don't come in and go, there's a fire.
Right.
And who did this and blame?
Right.
You live a life of ownership, accountability, and responsibility. That's above the line. That's an authentic life where you're not a victim. Versus what we tend to do and what our culture, I'm asking you to go away from the culture's belief system and what it perpetuates, away from blame, excuses, denial, distraction, drama. It spells bed. Get out of the bed. Stay above the line and truly create a paradise instead of going on a holiday. Paradise is right now. Present in your life, show up. And I get to say this. And so this is why people, I believe, listen to me. I go home and tube feed a boy, a young man, right? I get to say this. This is a crazy, wonderful, precious, and wild life. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? Don't chase it, but really date the universe. It sounds hokey, but if you date someone and treat them terrible, they're not going to call you. Mm-hmm. Everybody goes, where's my miracle? So when you come, I'm going to teach you to co-create a life that you deserve and respond to whatever shows up, knowing you're going to get through because you've got resiliency and you've got resources, and trust the process.
Wendy, great, fabulous message. Really, this is an absolutely incredible story with a fabulous message. Is there any questions that I should have asked, or any final thoughts that you want to say?
You know, I want people to be reassured. You know, I see so many incredible human beings, and anxiety, Mark, is just off the charts. And what I do see is people living their past, talking about their trauma, telling their story over and over. You do hear my story, all right? But what I want people to understand is just take the wisdom from your past. Quit saying, I am this, I have trauma. Stop. Take the wisdom from it and then put that jar that says past on the shelf. Quit telling that same old, using it. Do you know? Mm-hmm. And put a new jar in, taking the wisdom and really having a realistic optimism for the future. But everyone, start cutting the strings from identifying with your story. Start fresh with just optimistic belief in loving yourself and coming at it full on, the good, bad, and ugly, knowing this is your wild and precious life.
You only got one of them.
Yeah.
Live it
right?
to the fullest.
Well, India says lots more, but the one I'm going to remember, okay. I know. And I also just want to add, you know, we talk about Corey, but I have this other incredible son, and Kyle. He's training for a half Ironman, and he pushes his brother in marathons. And I want people to know that, you know, he's this incredible human being because of the adversity. So he also got the gift and the grit and resiliency of experiencing the challenge. So there are gifts in that for all of us.
Wendy, this was an amazing story. You're an amazing person.
Thank you.
Have an amazing family. I'm really happy that you were so open and honest with everybody about this journey that you've taken. So I really want to say from the bottom of my heart that I really appreciate you coming on Coffee with Krav. It really was fantastic. Thank you so much for telling your story. It really is
absolute pleasure.
And so for everybody, we'll be back for the next Coffee with Krav, Tuesday, June 6th, 10 o'clock a.m. It's going to be completely different. We're going to be talking about the markets. It's going to be a mid-year report. We're going to talk about economics, debt ceiling, other things that's going on in the markets. So mark it down in your calendars, and everybody go in peace, and we'll see you soon at Coffee with Krav. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.